Hi, I'm Kristy, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Here I like to talk about mythology, folklore, conspiracies, controversies and pretty much anything else that I like as well. So if that sounds like something that you would also like, then I suggest that you subscribe so that you can catch my videos every single week. In today's video we are chatting about Marilyn Monroe, a little bit about her life, a little bit about her death and a little bit about the conspiracy theories that surround the way that she died. If you know me, you know that I love a conspiracy theory. And just to make you aware that in today's video there will be talks of drug and alcohol abuse, of suicide and a very brief mention of child abuse as well, but I don't go into any detail of it, I just mention it. So if any of that is something that you can't hear right now, then I suggest that you click out of this video and I'll maybe see you again in a future one that's a little bit more suitable to you. Don't put your mental health at risk for the sake of a YouTube video. Honestly, it's really not worth it. Also, I do just want to put here that if you are experiencing any kind of suicidal thoughts or thoughts or feelings of not wanting to be here anymore, please do reach out to someone. Do not suffer alone. Do not suffer in silence. Reach out to someone that you can trust, whether that be a friend, a family member, a boss, a teacher, someone who you can turn to. I would also highly recommend speaking to a medical professional if that is available to you. In the description box I've added a Wikipedia link to all the suicide crisis helplines all around the world, so that if you are struggling at all, you know that you always have someone to talk to and they are just a phone call away. Yeah, like I said, it's really important that you open up and let someone know how you're feeling. It might feel like it sometimes, but I can promise you that you genuinely are not alone. Okay, and now we'll just hop into the video. So Norma Jean Mortison, later on baptised as Norma Jean Baker and more popularly known as the iconic Marilyn Monroe, was born in LA, California on June 1st, 1926. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I have a soft spot for Geminis. Marilyn's younger years were far from easy. She never knew who her father was, which made her mother, Gladys Perry Baker, a single mother. She actually did have two older half-siblings, a brother Robert and a sister Bernice, but she didn't even know that they existed until she was 12. Their father and Gladys's first husband, who was a very abusive man, actually kidnapped the children and took them to live in Kentucky. Before Marilyn could ever get to meet him, Robert passed away with kidney failure, but she did get to meet Bernice. They two started being almost like pen pals, writing letters back and forward to each other, and as Marilyn grew up until she died, her relationship with Bernice was a really important relationship in her life, and it made her feel not so alone in the world, knowing that she had a sister out there. And then Bernice later went on to write a memoir named My Sister Marilyn. Not only was Gladys a single mother, which is difficult enough in itself, but she was also working a very low income job as a film cutter at a Hollywood editing studio, and she was struggling to make ends meet. And if all of this wasn't difficult enough for her, she was also struggling with paranoid schizophrenia. She really wasn't very mentally well at all, which meant that although she did try her very best to be a good mother to Marilyn, it would unfortunately lead to her spending the majority of her childhood in and out of different foster homes. Gladys really struggled with losing her one remaining child and allegedly tried to kidnap Marilyn when she was around 3 years old. She was visiting her at one of the foster family's homes, and she stuffed Marilyn in a duffel bag and tried to run out the house with her, locking the foster mother inside the house, but she managed to break free and get Marilyn back. And I just think for a little child how traumatizing that must have been. Eventually Gladys had to be institutionalized because of her mental health issues, and legal guardianship of Marilyn went to Gladys's friend. This woman was named Grace McKee, and while Marilyn was staying with her under her care, she suffered sexual abuse at the hands of her husband. Now I don't know when the abuse started, but Marilyn moved in with them in 1934 when she was around 8 years old, so but I don't know exactly at what age this abuse started. Grace had her hands full with her own children, so she couldn't look after Marilyn anymore. And can you shut up? Grace had her hands full with her own children, so she was struggling to look after Marilyn as well, and she convinced a judge to grant her a half-orphan status. This meant that between the years of 1935 and 1942, she spent some time at an orphanage and an estimated 10 different foster homes where she also suffered sexual abuse as well. At the ripe old age of 16, Marilyn married her first husband, James Doherty, who was 21 at the time. Ultimately, their marriage wouldn't last. Apparently, he didn't really support Marilyn's career, and her Hollywood ambition was more important than the marriage that she had, so it ended up not lasting, and this would be the first of Marilyn's 3 failed marriages. Marilyn had always wanted to be famous, and I don't think it was about money or anything like that. I think it was about having that love and admiration from other people. She had spent so much of her life feeling abandoned, unloved, and like she didn't matter. So if she could make it famous and be like a Hollywood star, then that could be some sort of validation to her that she did matter. When speaking about her first experience of the movies, she said, "I didn't like the world around me because it was kind of grim. When I heard that this was acting, I said, that's what I want to be. Some of my foster families used to send me to the movies to get me out of the house, and I'd sit there all day and way into the night. Up in the front, there with the screen so big, a little kid all alone, and I loved it." Determined to make it big in Hollywood, Marilyn started off her career with modelling. Obviously, she is absolutely stunning, so why could she not make it as a fucking model? The agency that she was working with felt that her body type would be more suited to pin-up type of modelling rather than high fashion. Obviously, Marilyn had like boobs and curves, so she featured in a lot of men's magazines and in a lot of advertisements as well. And then she started to make her way towards her real passion, which was acting, although her acting teachers at the time thought that she was too shy and too insecure to ever make it big. Of course, in spite of how shy she was, she obviously did make it big, and even 50 years after her death, she's one of the most recognisable household names and iconic Hollywood stars that there ever was. So good for you, Marilyn. Some of her most popular film roles over the years were Some Like It Hot, The Misfits, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, The 7-Year Itch, which I fucking love. That's like a comfort film for me. It's so fucking good. How to Marry a Millionaire, Bus Stop, and Niagara. Niagara was one of her most sexual film roles and was deemed by some groups at the time as immoral. I mean, I've actually never seen it, but I bet you it was fucking nothing compared to today's standards. It was while pursuing her dreams that it was suggested to her that she changed her name from Norma Jean to Marilyn Monroe. Norma Jean didn't sound like a Hollywood star, and Marilyn Monroe just sounded a lot more pizzazzy, and it's actually not all that uncommon for actors to have stage names. She chose Marilyn because she reminded people of the Broadway star Marilyn Miller, and Monroe because that was her mother's maiden name. Her name wasn't the only thing that Hollywood thought that she should change. She dyed her brunette hair to the platinum blonde bombshell that we all know her as today. She ended up really loving this blonde look, and even says that she didn't ever want to tan because she liked to feel blonde all over. It's also rumoured that Marilyn had hairline electrolysis to change the shape of her hairline and get rid of her widow's peak, and can I just say, how dare you? She also used a hormone cream on her face as part of her beauty regime, and because she was using this hormone cream, it actually caused her to grow little vellus, fluffy peach fuzz hairs all over her face, which directors and Hollywood people always wanted her to remove, but she always refused this because she says that it gave her a really beautiful soft glow under the studio lights. A lot of times back then, to give this soft glow, they would have to put like a thick layer of Vaseline Vaseline on people's face or film them through lace, but they didn't have to do that with Marilyn because this soft fluffy hair gave this same effect. It's also reported that she had a chin implant put in after hearing a casting director refer to her as a chinless wonder, and she also apparently had surgery done to the tip of her nose as well. Now listen, I'm all for plastic surgery. If you want to have something done to your face or your body and it's going to make you feel good, I say do it. I am absolutely all for it. I've had a nose job myself. Who am I to talk? But I can't help but wonder how much of this Marilyn done because it would make her feel beautiful, confident, happy, and how much of it was done because she had a feeling of feeling not good enough and that her looks and sexuality were the only important thing about her, you know. This is a quote from Marilyn herself. She said, "In Hollywood, a girl's virtue is much less important than her hairdo. You're judged by how you look, not by what you are." It also came to a point in her career where she was really sick of playing the same character over and over again. She was always cast as this like ditzy blonde, like this like sexy bombshell, and she was kind of over it at a point and she wanted to take on more serious roles. I feel like there was a real distinct difference between Marilyn Monroe, the performer, and Norma Jean, the real person. There's this quote from the wife of Marilyn's personal photographer, and I just love it, and I think it really puts into words what I mean when I say this. I'll never forget the day Marilyn and I were walking around New York City, just having a stroll on a nice day. She loved New York because no one bothered her there like they did in Hollywood. She could put on her plain Jane clothes and no one would notice her. She loved that. So as we were walking down Broadway, she turns to me and says, "Do you want to see me become her?" I didn't know what she meant, but I just said yes, and then I saw it. I don't know how to explain what she did because it was so very subtle, but she turned something on within herself that was almost like magic. And suddenly, cars were slowing and people were turning their heads and stopping to stare. They were recognising that this was Marilyn Monroe, as if she'd pulled off a mask or something, even though a second ago, nobody noticed her. I had never seen anything like it before. Marilyn's career started to decline in about 1960 when she received some not so good criticism on her film Let's Make Love. She received comments that she looked rather untidy and that she lacked the old Monroe dynamism. During her filming of the last film role that she ever actually completed, her health started to decline quite severely as she was struggling with a really bad drug addiction. It's said that often her makeup would have to be done as she slept because she was completely knocked out because she'd been taking barbiturates, which is a type of drug that depresses the central nervous system. So basically it's a sedative and she was addicted to these. As well as being addicted to barbiturates, she was also addicted to amphetamines and alcohol as well. And it's no secret that Marilyn suffered from many different mental health issues, including anxiety, depression, low self-esteem and chronic insomnia. Obviously Marilyn had an extremely traumatic childhood, and I can't imagine Hollywood, a place where you're never thin enough, never pretty enough, never good an actor enough, never this enough, never that enough, was really the right place to kind of nurture her and give her the care and love that she craved and needed. I think to make it in Hollywood, you have to be so mentally strong, and if you already struggle with mental health issues, I think it could be really easy to decline in that kind of environment. So I can see how she would turn to drugs to kind of help to soothe how she was feeling on the inside. On top of her addiction, she also suffered from various types of physical health issues, For example, she had endometriosis and she developed gallstones, and she also had quite severe sinus infections. A couple of months before her death, Marilyn was fired from the movie Something's Got to Give because she was always late all the time, she couldn't remember her lines, and she was off sick so much. And this movie sued Marilyn for $750,000 in damages. It was round about this time that she performed the extremely well-known Happy Birthday, Mr. President for John F. Kennedy, and she caused quite a stir with her nude sequin dress that left very little to the imagination, and her very sexy, seductive performance didn't do very much to neutralise rumours that her and JFK were having an affair with each other. Some people even commented that the performance was like making love to the president in front of 40 million Americans. Afterwards, JFK joked that he could now retire after he had Happy Birthday performed to him in such a sweet, wholesome way. When introduced to the stage that night by Peter Lawford, he introduced her as the late Marilyn Monroe, poking fun at the fact that she was notoriously always late for events, but little did anyone know that within less than 3 months she would be dead. At around 3:50 a.m. on August 5th, 1962, Marilyn's housekeeper Eunice Murray woke up sensing that something was wrong. And from the space underneath Marilyn's bedroom door, she could see that the light was on, but she couldn't get any response from her, and the bedroom door had also been locked. This prompted her to call Marilyn's psychiatrist, Ralph Greenson, and he advised her to go and look through the window to go and check on her to see that she was okay. And when she got round to the window and looked in the bedroom, she seen Marilyn laying on her bed, covered with a sheet, clutching the telephone receiver face down. Marilyn Monroe, at only age 36, was dead. Autopsy reports believe that her time of death had been around 8:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. on the 4th of August, and the reason that they believed this is because how advanced the rigor mortis had set in. At around 8 p.m. on the night of her death, Marilyn retired to her bedroom, and sometime after that she received a phone call from her friend and actor Peter Lawford, who grew concerned during this phone call because she sounded like she was under the influence of drugs. And she told him, "Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy," before drifting off into silence. He was panicking and began phoning around to see if someone could get a hold of Marilyn. Eventually they got through to Marilyn's lawyer, who managed to phone the house, who got through to Eunice, the housekeeper, and she checked on Marilyn and assured him that she was absolutely fine. The death was considered to be a probable suicide, and the cause of death was acute barbiturate poisoning. The reason that they thought that it was a suicide and not an accidental overdose is because the amount that was in her body was so many times over what they considered to be a lethal limit. So they believed that whatever she took was took in one big gulp or several gulps over the course of only a minute. In the final reports of Marilyn's death, this is what was stated. Miss Monroe had suffered from psychiatric disturbance for a long time. She experienced severe fears and frequent depressions. Mood changes were abrupt and unpredictable. Among symptoms of disorganisation, sleep disturbance was prominent, for which she had been taking sedative drugs for many years. She was thus familiar with and experienced in the use of sedative drugs and well aware of their dangers. In our investigation, we have learned that Miss Monroe had often expressed wishes to give up, to withdraw, and even to die. On more than one occasion in the past, she had made a suicide attempt using sedative drugs. On these occasions, she had called for help and been rescued. It is our opinion that the same pattern was repeated on the evening of August 4th, except for the rescue. It has been our practice, with similar information collected in other cases in the past, to recommend a certification for such deaths as probable suicide. Additional clues for suicide provided by the physical evidence are the high level of barbiturates and chlorohydrate in the blood, which, with other evidence from the autopsy, indicates the probable indigestion of a large amount of drugs within a short period of time. The complete empty bottle of Nembutal, the prescription for which, 25 capsules, was filed the day before the ingestion, and the locked door to the bedroom, which was unusual. Although it does seem perfectly possible that someone with such poor mental health, as well as struggling with a drug addiction, would have been suicidal, that doesn't stop there being so many conspiracy theories surrounding the death of Marilyn. For one, it's reported that the way she was found face down on her bed, she was laid like perfectly flat out as if she'd been positioned that way, and supposedly if you do take like an overdose with like that amount of lethal drugs in your system, more often than not the body will start spasming and you wouldn't be just laid out perfectly. Like, you're not likely to just lie down and die. Your body would start convulsing. So a lot of people found it suspicious the way that her body was found. And in a series of audio tapes that Marilyn had recorded not long before her death, she spoke about her plans for the future and spoke about them in like a very positive way, leading people to believe that she had no intention of ending her life. So one theory is that her doctors accidentally overdosed her and them and the housekeeper helped to cover it up. So I think she had two doctors, and the theory goes that she lied to them both about the prescriptions that the other ones had given to her, and they didn't cross-check with each other what she'd been having. Well, at the time, obviously she had chronic insomnia, so she was not sleeping well at all, as well as a lot of physical issues going on that she could have been taking medication for. And it's not all that out of the realm of possibility that a drug addict would lie to their doctors to try and get more drugs if they were going through them at quite a rapid pace to make sure that they weren't going to run out. And then if this was true, like I said, the doctors and Eunice the housekeeper made it look like a suicide, because who would want to be the one responsible for the death of Marilyn Monroe? This would also explain why she was super weird on the phone with Peter Lawford, but when Eunice checked on her, she was absolutely fine. So that is kind of sus to me. So if the timeline is correct, she went to her bedroom at 8 p.m. and spoke on the phone with Peter Lawford sometime after this. She was sounding real slurry and clearly under the influence. Peter Lawford freaks out, tries to call her back, can't get a hold of her, then called his agent to see if he had a way of getting hold of her. And then the agent called Marilyn's psychiatrist, who couldn't get through, and then after that called Marilyn's lawyer, who called Eunice, who checked on Marilyn and said that she was fine. So we know that she retired to her bedroom round about 8 p.m. Then she had that say goodbye phone call. Then everyone with all the like calling back and forward to each other, say that takes us to about 8:30 p.m. Even if it took us to slightly before 8:30 p.m. Eunice checked on her around about this time, said that she was absolutely fine, but in the autopsy report it states that she probably died between 8:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. So that paired with the phone conversation where she very clearly wasn't okay and the autopsy's suggested time of death, I can see why people wouldn't believe that Eunice checked on her and she was fine, but within 2 hours she was dead. I mean, it's completely possible, but it does seem a little bit suspicious. And this next theory, which is the most popular one, and I'm sure that you already know about it, is that the Kennedys killed her. It's highly speculated that Marilyn was having an affair with President John F. Kennedy, and not only that, but his younger brother, the Attorney General Robert Kennedy, as well. And a lot of people believe that she was about to go public about this affair and that would tarnish their reputation massively, so they killed her and staged it as a suicide to stop their names from being dragged through the mud. Some people believe that they used her drug addiction to their advantage and used it to help induce her suicide, if that makes sense. Either because she was going to go public about the affairs and ruin their reputation, or because she knew too much government business. If this is true, she was mingling with a lot of very powerful men and apparently knew a lot of stuff that she really shouldn't know. Apparently she had a little red book that she would record highly confidential government conversations in, and she was considered a liability to the Kennedys. In this theory, Peter Lawford is also involved because he was actually brother-in-law to the Kennedys, so people believe that maybe he had something to do with it and helped somewhat stage this suicide. Robert Kennedy swears that he was in San Francisco the night that Marilyn had died. However, there are reports of people seeing him in LA at the time, and people even seeing him entering Marilyn's apartment. Whether this is true or not, who knows? Also, a well-known wiretapper, Bernard Spindle, claims that he had actually bugged Marilyn's apartment and he was listening through like audio recordings and shit. And when he went through these recordings on the night that she died, he could hear Marilyn and Robert Kennedy arguing loudly. Peter Lawford was also present at the time, and at one point in the recording there was a very loud bang, and he believes that this was the point in which Marilyn died. But apparently the recordings were seized and destroyed in 1966, so even if we wanted to hear them, we probably never will. And you might be thinking, well, if that loud bang was, say for instance, a gunshot, why would she be found with lethal amounts of barbiturates in her system? And you're right, but think about this. Do you think that the Kennedys, one of the most powerful and influential families in the entire world, couldn't cover this up if they wanted to? And some people believe that it was the mafia that assassinated Marilyn and took her out because, once again, she was having affairs with some very powerful men and she knew a lot of stuff. Darwin Porter, who wrote the book Marilyn at Rainbow's End, Sex, Lies, Murder and the Great Cover-Up, it's not a very catchy title, is it? He said, people had a lot to lose if Marilyn spoke out. She was making a lot of dangerous statements and didn't realise she was playing with the big boys. I think Marilyn got in over her head. Darwin believes that 5 mafia hitmen targeted Marilyn, knocked her out by using a cloth doused in chloroform. When she was asleep, they gave her a barbiturate enema. Don't know if I'm saying that right, you know, the thing that goes up your bum. And that's how she had the barbiturate overdose, but ultimately it was them that killed her. Another less common and somewhat ridiculous theory is that Marilyn was taken out because she knew too much about the existence of aliens. Now, I believe in aliens, and I think it would be quite ignorant to believe that Earth is the only planet that has any life form on it. So I'm not disagreeing with the existence of aliens. I just think, would they kill her if she knew too much about aliens? Because, I mean, not that I would put it past like the government. We'll get into like that. Do you know what? That's for another day. But what I just think is, because Marilyn's mental health wasn't very good and because her mother's mental health wasn't very good, if she started like spouting stuff about aliens, even if that stuff was true, could they not just play the, oh my god, Marilyn's crazy card, look, her mum has schizophrenia, she must have schizophrenia as well? I feel like they would probably just do that rather than kill her, because I mean, most people probably would have just thought she had went like a bit mad if she started like chatting about the existence of aliens, you know? So I don't believe that one. Like many stars who are taken too soon, taken too young, such as Elvis, Tupac, Princess Diana, many people just refuse to believe that they actually did die, and Marilyn Monroe is no exception. Some people believe that Marilyn staged her own death because so many people were threatening her life that she just needed like a way to escape, and she was really frightened that she was going to be murdered, so she pretended to kill herself so that she would be I mean, who's going to look for a dead person, you know? Or that, or because she'd had enough of being Marilyn Monroe and she wanted to go back to being Norma Jean again. An author by the name of John Baker, who wrote the book titled Marilyn Monroe, Alive in 1984, claims that he met Marilyn 22 years after her supposed death. He said that while in Canada, he came across a woman who was hitchhiking and her name was Norma Jean. He said, "She looked amazing, like Marilyn Monroe, with a few years added on. She sang just like Marilyn Monroe, and she seemed to know everything about Marilyn Monroe's life. She talked about her life as Marilyn, as though she was just reminiscing." He said that she told him that she had been put in a mental institution and stayed there for 20 years. She had had a complete mental breakdown because of all the threats on her life, and her psychiatrist institutionalized her, and no one, not even the workers at the institution, knew that she was really Marilyn Monroe. Okay, so time for my thoughts, and my thoughts are that I just don't know. Like, I just don't know. I don't believe the alien one, and I also don't believe that she didn't die, although that would be nice. I don't think it's impossible that the Kennedys took her out. I don't even think that it's impossible that the mafia took her out. And I don't think that it's impossible that her doctors accidentally overdosed her and then they staged it as a suicide. Then again, I also don't think it's impossible that she really did commit suicide. I don't know. I think if new evidence came to light, I could definitely be swayed either way. But as of right now, I just don't know. I'm probably leaning more towards that she did commit suicide. I think in some cases, definitely not all, like I watch a lot of true crime, you know, that definitely not all cases, but in some cases, maybe the most simple explanation is the real one. But like I said, I just don't know. What do you think? I would love to have a discussion about this in the comments. So if you have like any like thoughts, opinions, facts or reasons why you do or don't believe certain things, then pop them in the comments, let me know, we'll have a chat about it, and cool. All I can say is, no matter what happened to Norma Jean, I think it was a great tragedy for the world to lose her, and I hope that whatever happened to her, she's found some peace now. Thank you so much for watching. Give the video a thumbs up for good karma. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this every single Wednesday, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.